should probably expect spoilers. Within the Street Fighter universe, there exists a character whose presence has been shrouded in more mystery than the old Shenlong rumours. A character so perplexing that it's often debated if Capcom themselves even knew what they were doing with him when they created him. He is one of the biggest question marks looming over the entire series, and with only one game appearance, our leads on him are extremely limited. Who that? We don't entirely know, but people call him Q. Who is Q? Or rather, what is Q? The Street Fighter cast pride themselves with varied backgrounds from all different walks of life. There's so many different personalities and they're all here for different reasons. And then there's this guy, Q, the most enigmatic character to grace the series. So suspicious in fact that when you dive into the rabbit hole looking for answers on him, you can't back out covered in rabbit shit and more questions than you had before you went in. Q has no apparent backstory, his motives are extremely unclear, and his overall objective within the series also remains a mystery. He has no info on file, and everything from his age to place of birth is seemingly unknown. With facing such dead ends, how on earth was I going to do an entire episode on this guy? It was a case like all my other cases, basically meaning I sucked at my job and everything remained unsolved by the end of it. I had just sat down at my desk that clearly wasn't mine but belonged to my girlfriend because she has a desk lamp and I needed it for atmospheric effect. Though seriously babes, what is even half of this shit? I looked over the notes on a suspect called Q and noticed I had not written anything, not because I fell asleep during my inquiries but because nobody knew anything about him. I was off to a brilliant start and felt an urge to Shoryuken myself through the window behind me. Because Q only appeared in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, the only asset we have that can piece together a story for him comes during his ending. The ending shows some detectives discussing a string of recent unsolved murders that occurred around the world, all within 10 days of each other, and in each photo of these crime scenes do we see the same man dressed in a trench coat and hat. Upon closer inspection they discover the unidentified man to be wearing a silver mask. And that's where the questions begin. How can the same man have been in all of these different places at roughly the same time? The theories at the moment are a split between Q obviously having some sort of supernatural ability that defies the laws of time and space, while another theory questions if maybe there are more than one Q. Perhaps an organization has a truckload of these Qs and are sending them out to quietly tiptoe in the shadows and screw with you mentally. Either way, the CIA finds it troubling, and the only link they have between these unsolved murders is this guy in the mask. Whether Q was responsible for the murders is never revealed, but the last time we left Q, he was a wanted man by the CIA, who were now on high alert looking for his creepy ass. That's it. As far as in-game story elements go, that really is all we have to go on when it comes down to Q. Which means the rest of it comes from trying to figure out other aspects about him based on observation and speculation. So, let's give that a try then. Visual design. Q looks like he walked straight in from the typical detective archetype category with a long trench coat and fedora hat. No hipster. He must have been watching plenty of Robot Detective K during the 1970s too, because Q straight up catted that look for his own mask design. And really though, what is up with that mask? Is that even a mask, or is he some kinda Roboto-chan like his beloved senpai Detective K? It was getting late and I was getting no closer to uncovering the truth as to who Q was. Wanting to go to sleep so I could dream about hot female wrestlers double butt pressing me on both sides of my face, I made a wild stab in the dark and concluded that Q was in fact 1990s cult classic cat burglar Larson Tyler from the ill-fated but highly cherished Sega fighting game Eternal Champions, which I also believe deserved a reboot in the same vein that Killer Instinct had recently received. Where was I going? Some evidence points to Q being a human just wearing a Ponzi gimp mask. There are plenty of moments in which we see skin between the gloves and the sleeves of his jacket, not to mention the parts of his neck that are also visibly showing skin. So, he's a human then? If only things were that simple with Q. See, here's another mystery surrounding him that currently doesn't have an official answer. Most characters in the game have a shock animation for when they are attacked by an electrical technique, and throughout the series this has always been displayed as the image of the character's skeleton flashing violently. Street Fighter 3 is no exception. Each character has their own unique shock animation that will display their skeletal structure. Except Q. Get your Pikachu to use Thunderbolt on Q, and instead of displaying a skeleton, it will display his muscular system instead. Strange, isn't it? Furthermore, look closely at his head. That's clearly not his mask being displayed because it's lacking the nose section from the mask, which must mean this is what Q looks like underneath the mask. And I don't even know what else to call that aside from a robot. Or, if we're being specific, we could rock the boat a little and say perhaps Q is a cyborg of some kind. Cyborgs do exist within the Street Fighter universe, with the most notable cyborg character being Matthew McCoy from Cammy's Delta Red crew. So, you know, it's possible. Whatever he is though, Q does look great. I am partial to this type of look, from your Rorschachs to your smooth criminal Michael Jackson music videos. There's something so classy yet shady about it, and Q is no exception. Visually, he has the essence of the classic detective style about him, with the right shade of camel beige to give his appearance a familiar aura to it, but those gleaming yellow eyes from his mask make him feel incredibly ominous and otherworldly. With no visible face, it's hard to read this guy's emotions on face value alone, and so we have to look at other aspects to figure out his personality, which is a whole other can of worms to deal with. So let's keep it moving. Personality. Q gives you no easy answers here either. The best way to describe his personality is what I like to dub as the robotic Frankenstein. When it comes to movement, he moves far less fluidly than a human should do in combat, looking very rigid and artificial. He's also got a unique losing pose when you defeat him by chipping him out. He shuts down trying to grab you with his arms stretched out, and his eyes also power down too, kinda like a robot. Q doesn't speak clear dialogue, merely just grunting and mumbling. He sometimes breathes heavily in a Darth Vader style too, which sounds incredibly sinister after he's finished destroying his opponent and has already left the screen. You win. Some of his intro animations that occur before a fight show civilians running scared from him, so it's evident that Q is being portrayed in this terrifying angle, kinda like Frankenstein. There's a reason I choose to use the Frankenstein comparison and not something like, say, a zombie or another creature, and that is because Frankenstein was a monster that displayed levels of humanity and emotion, which Q also does. You have to look at Q's winning pose animations. On one hand, his monstrous side comes out as he approaches the lifeless body of his opponent and stamps on their face to further remove them from existence. Other times, he will approach their body and sigh quietly while looking down at them before walking away. Sometimes he'll just stand there looking at them for a short spell and do nothing. I don't know how else to explain that, but to me, it looks like remorse, especially the way he sighs. To me, that sounds remorseful. Q is Third Strike's secret battle character. This could be taken to mean that Q is only looking for the strongest fighters in the world, and if that holds true, then Q isn't just out there hunting down random people, he's got a purpose or a goal. He's after something, and it seems to link itself to skilled fighters. So I feel the remorse he sometimes shows after a fight might lend itself to this theory, in the sense that perhaps he hasn't found what he's looking for. Or maybe the opponent who he had faced was not as strong as he had imagined, and therefore he feels remorse for destroying a combatant weaker than him. Maybe it's pity he's feeling, or maybe he's questioning his own actions. So far from what I can gather of Q is he's clearly on some sort of mission, whether it be personal or part of a bigger organization. He carries out his objectives with little consideration for anything around him, and he seems to harbour malicious and even murderous intent to see the job through. But sometimes, you see him reflecting upon the battle he just had, and perhaps he might even be questioning himself as to why he does what he does. Whatever the case may be, Q's personality can be considered a complex Pandora's box that is bubbling away underneath that mask of his, and until we see more of Q, I guess we won't know for sure. Importance. Q doesn't connect to the other cast members or any of the storylines currently active in the series. He exists as his own being, an enigma that appears and vanishes as he pleases, with nothing holding him down. As I said before, the world of Street Fighter contains many more characters with rich backgrounds and reasons for being here. Q's background is based entirely on speculation, so what does that do for him? I had to ask myself two questions during this case. The first question was, who the bloody hell was this idiot in the mask? Because I got no closer to finding the answer to that question, I had to follow it up with a second. Did it even bloody matter? The answer turned out to be no, so I went back to playing Drift Girls on my 1+1. This is what makes Q interesting to me. It should not matter who Q is, because quite frankly the answer will never ever live up to the hype surrounding the speculation. I've heard theories of it being everything from Chun-Li's dead father to one of the CIA agents investigating him that appears during his ending. Whatever the answer is, shouldn't matter. What makes Q important to the universe is the speculation itself. No other character has had fans scratching their heads since Ryu was talking about someone named Sheng Long. No other character has opened the floodgates more for speculative discussion within this universe other than Q. His mystery is what makes him important to the world's lore. He is an open-ended book that keeps us involved. So no, we don't need to know exactly who he is. But I personally would like to know why he does what he does. What are his true intentions? Why is he seeking the world's strongest fighters? Does he work alone? Is he part of a group? These are the questions that I feel need answering. To that end, I feel Q will always have a place in the Street Fighter universe because of these mysteries surrounding him. Conclusion. Have you ever watched the movie Pulp Fiction? It's one of my personal favourites. In the film there is a briefcase that contains a desirable item that a bunch of the other characters are interested in. They mention how valuable it is, but it's never ever stated as to what the item actually is. The same thing kinda sort of applies to Q. We do not really need to know who the man behind the mask is because chances are it won't live up to the hype. What matters most is the legends surrounding Q, a smartly dressed robotic Frankenstein that only appears to those who are the strongest in the world. What we need to know is not his identity, but why he's here and what is he really up to. As far as I'm concerned, I would love to have Q in Street Fighter V, if only just to build upon this legend further. He's the biggest self-contained mystery to grace the series, and he's such a welcome addition to the universe he inhabits. My case remained unsolved. I left the office to take a walk around town and soak up the air in the night. Q had escaped me like he escaped everybody else. But then it occurred to me, Street Fighter V, the dawn of the next Street Fighter game, was vastly approaching, and it offered a continuation of the storyline. What if this was our chance to learn more about Q? The possibility had whet my appetite. It clearly wasn't over yet. The ball was in Capcom's court, and like the character I was chasing, I too was about to sit in the shadows and wait for my moment to strike again. Bring it on, you son of a bitch.